Okay, today we're talking about Shevisas Keilim. Okay, so on Shabbos, we're not allowed to do melacha. Our animals can't do certain melacha, and there's an issur for us to have someone who's not Jewish do melacha for us also. Us doing melacha on animals is a deraisa, or potentially deraisa, depending on how you do it. Asking someone who's not Jewish to do something is a drabanan. And the Gemara has a machlokes whether there's an issur for my things to think they're not my animals, not my neighbor, not myself, but my things, my keilim, my machinery, my things. Can they do melacha? And the din is like Beis Hillel that there's no issur of Shevisas Keilim. Am I keilim allowed to do? No, there's no issur of. There's no requirement of Shevisas Keilim. I don't have my keilim. Do not have to do nothing on Shabbos. So, for example, the Gemara's example is if I put olives into a press and they're pressing the whole Shabbos, so there's a melacha happening. I'm being mafarik. I'm taking the oil out of the olive. No problem. That's happening on Shabbos. I give my plow to someone who's not Jewish and he wants to use it for Shabbos. No problem. Even though my plow is doing things, my plow is being chayrish on Shabbos. It's not a problem. I'm allowed to do the melacha. Now there's a side thing. We're talking only about for now about the Shevisas Keilim part of it. The Shulchan Aruch talks about certain times when it looks like I told the guy to do something, so that would be different. But that's not for the kli itself. It's that the fact that he's using my thing that's obviously mine. It's my plow. Everyone can tell it's mine. Gives the impression that I told him to do something on Shabbos. That's a side issue. That's not the kli itself. That's within the, so to speak, in the world of Amir Lach. Okay, so since we passed like Beis Hillel, there's no issue Shevisas Keilim, so we can go, well, right, we're finished. No, shear's over. Okay, so I'm going to talk about some things that maybe have to do with that, yes or no, to do with this possible reason why I'd have to have Shevisas Keilim. So, Shachta said that in the early 1900s, there was a big to-do in contemporary poskim about whether you could set a timer before Shabbos, excuse me, to turn your lights on Shabbos. Okay, so most of them thought that's no problem. The fact that the lights go on Shabbos, those are my keilim are doing things. My lights are going on and off. My lights are doing a melacha. That would be a melacha on Shabbos, but that's okay. There's no issur of Shevisas Keilim. My keilim are allowed to do melacha. So whatever I did was from before Shabbos. My keilim, they could do what they wanted. What's the difference? If my keilim go on and off? Is something wrong? Okay, fine. But others said no, it's not true. Even though there's no chiv of Shevisas Keilim, that's only true if my keilim just do things, like the cases I gave you. But if if my keilim start doing melacha on Shabbos, that I can't do. So in the case that I gave you, the olive I put it in, and the melacha started before Shabbos. Or in the case of the plow, presumably it's because the guy is doing it. The keilim are not starting on their own. But if my keilim just wake up and start doing melacha on Shabbos, that those people hold you weren't allowed to do.
How do they know that? What would that be? What's this?
I don't know why they thought it, but I'm not finished yet. So at the time, it became the consensus to be makel, because why should it be such a thing? What's the difference? There's no chiv of Shevisas Keilim, no chiv of such a thing. Okay, and that's why that people use timers to turn the lights on and air conditioners or whatever they just want to put on Shabbos. Okay, but however, Shachta said later, since that machlokes happened, they found pirush of the Rambam on a bunch of several Masechtas, pirush on Gemara that he had said he was going to write, or he did write. He said he wrote a pirush on Gemara, and they found his pirush on the Gemara on Shabbos. It's not like on the whole Masechta, but on parts of it. And on there, in Daf Yudzayin and Beis, which is where these sugyas are, where these things are, the Rambam says exactly this thing. Okay, exactly what the Rambam says. He says Beis Hillel says that you can Shevisas Keilim was mutter. That's only if it's keilim that were started from before Shabbos, but if it started on Shabbos, then it wouldn't be. Now, it's coming from a Gemara. Rashi and everybody else learns that line in the Gemara is in the sheet of Beis Shammai, not in the sheet of Beis Hillel. That line that the Rambam is reading to say that there's such a thing as Shevisas Keilim. If you're not allowed to have your keilim do something, if they start doing melacha within Beis Hillel, everybody else assumes that's in Beis Shammai. But Rosh said, look, but the Rambam says such a thing. Now, before we move on, you realize there's something really strange over here. If the Rambam thought that was shot in the Gemara, which you read, you'll see that's what he thinks is shot in the Gemara. How come it's not in Mishnah Torah? How come it's not in the Halacha? How come it doesn't say Shevisas Keilim was mutter in this case? Just Shevisas Keilim was okay. There's no chiv of Shevisas Keilim, but in these cases it's usher. How come it doesn't say in the Mishnah Torah? So I can answer that question. What's even stranger is that the Beis Yosef asks a question. He says, how come the Rambam doesn't bring this din? I'm about to tell you an example of this din of Keilim starting a melacha of Rechaim Shomayim. I'm going to tell you the case in a second. I'll get to that in a second. He says, how come the Rambam doesn't bring that din? It's a Gemara talks about it. How come the Rambam leaves out this Gemara? Usually the Rambam, every example the Gemara brings. So he says, okay, he has an answer because in that case in the Gemara the Gemara doesn't state beferish that everyone says it's mutter, so he didn't decide to bring it in. Not a beferish a Gemara, it's a deek within a Gemara. So okay, he didn't bother to make it. That's what the Beis Yosef says. Really? According to this Pirush of this Rambam, and Pirush on the Gemara, it not only is it not mutter, it's actually usher. So how could he not say that? It's like the question of the Beis Yosef is even stronger, which is like, how could you not mention this case? So it's even stronger. But kacha, that's what it says. Now, Rav Shach said also that when this Rabbi Zalman, I can't find it. I'm sure it's there. I don't just like Haaretz on this Pirush of the Rambam that was printed on the Shevisas Shabbos. So I didn't see it inside. I'm just taking his word from it. But what he's going to say is correct, and that is that this Yerushalmi at the very beginning of Shabbos that also says exactly the same thing. Okay, Yerushalmi is talking about a Rechaim Shomayim. It's a watermill, and the watermill. The Gemara says. Setting up a watermill before Shabbos, you put in 1,000 pounds of flour, and you set into the mill. The water will make it grind it, and that's going to continue on into Shabbos. And Yerushalmi says, no, you can't do that. You can't do that because the mill, every grain is a new melacha. It's not a continuous melacha. Like the case I said to you beforehand of putting the dye to soak into something like I don't know if it's the case. Or the olives, it just keeps on pressing. The melacha started before Shabbos and it continues on to Shabbos. So the Gemara has another case of a dye. You put your clothes into the solution to get dyed, and just a continuous process. Here,
it's just like you let water into the garden to water it.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, water.
So the Gemara looks at it as it's one big flow of water, but here each grain is a separate one. The words Yerushalmi are kaman mishum doi huscha b'chol tipa v'tipa. Kan inun amrin. I'm having a hard time with Yerushalmi words. Hacha mishum doi huscha b'chol chita v'chita. Okay, every grain is a new piece of grain. So the grain that happened before Shabbos and the grain on Shabbos, and you can't start a melacha. Okay, now everybody, all the Mefarshim on that Yerushalmi say that Yerushalmi is also within Beis Shammai. Okay, if you read Yerushalmi, maybe you're biased because you see with all the Mefarshim on the side. Everybody says the flow of that Yerushalmi is that line is within the sheet of Beis Shammai called the Shevisas Keilim. Maybe he only holds it in certain cases, but not in other cases. Okay, not in Beis Hillel, but maybe the Rambam somehow again just like he did in the Bavli. Maybe Yerushalmi also had some way to read it to be within Beis Hillel.
If the review is Shevisas Keilim, so then if you tell a guy, let's say, to work your Sada on Shabbos, that end up being
no, I'm not sure if that's the same thing because he's doing it. He's taking it. I'm not sure if that just is bad because you weren't part of it. Then I'm not sure what to say about that. Okay, so Rav Shach said, listen, he says you should know the din is not like that. I was like, nobody learns like this. I mean, and just because they found this Pirush in the Ram now, nobody learns like this. And the Yerushalmi Pashas is going in Beis Shammai, not in Beis Hillel. He says, but even so, he says he thinks it's a worthwhile thing to be machmir for. And that line that I just said to you, which is, there's this shita, it's not halacha, but it's worthwhile to be machmir on it in the Shevisas Keilim, is reminiscent of something that you might know if you knew those dinim. In the same simon, the Beis Yosef brings the shita of a Rokech. Okay. And the Rokech says, the Rokech says, the heter of Shevisas Keilim is only mutter. There's no requirement of Shevisas Keilim, and I keep saying this in a backwards way, is only if something's passive, like the press just does what it's doing, it just stays what it's doing. But if you have something that's active, that goes ahead and starts up, not he doesn't use, not because of the focusing on the starting, but it's doing something active, that's something that would be answered. I'm sorry, and he says, and his example is a plow. Okay, if you have your plow doing melacha, so maybe he holds that case is considered like a starting. Like if the guy is doing it, the plow is doing melacha on job. The plow is doing something that you're not allowed to do. And he says, I don't know what you're talking about. He says the Gemara says Shevisas Keilim was mutter. Well, I don't know what this Rokech is talking about. He says I don't know how he could say such a thing. So a lot of the Achronim try to find explanations for this Rokech. A lot of them tried to say, yes, where did it come from? How it could be such a shita? Where did it come? Blah, 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 blah. But a number of the Achronim, the Bach and the Chassam Sofer and Rosh Zalman, say, Hagam that they didn't, it's not like this Rekech. It's a good thing to be machmer for this thing to not allow Shevisas, to not allow your Keilim to do melacha under the way he said it, which is doing something rather than being passive about doing something. So just what Rav Shach is saying about this is very reminiscent of that idea. Okay, so that's one piece. Now, so all this is I don't know if I could use the word personal. When you go home, do you want to put a timer on for your lights? You don't want to put it on. Okay. I'll just mention to you, Rosh Zalman, who said this in Ma'iri Eish, his sefer on like electricity and things like that, who says it's worthwhile to be machmer. It doesn't say in Shevisas Shabbos Keilim. Okay, there it tells you could use timers and do whatever you want to. It doesn't have anything like that. So it's just, I don't know what it is, some kind of a chumrah. Now,
maybe a thermostat also, you can turn off for air conditioning and heating.
Because?
It go on, it goes off, and all of a sudden it goes on when it gets to a certain temperature.
It's more of a grumble, isn't it?
Okay, I have to think about that part. Okay?
It's not a grumble. It's nothing, but it's this question.
Is your Keilim are doing things? That's okay. I have to think about it.
Your thermostat is turning on and off your it's a very valid angle of it.
But it's the temperature that's causing it.
Rough
It's
times.
not as set.
What's more positive about a plow
You're
than
clean.
about
You have a
a
clean
wine press?
That is
A wine press?
turning
Because the
on
press
and off.
somehow just like
Started?
no, I don't want to use the word start. I don't want to say he's saying the same
The
thing.
Shabbos
It's
clock, you
active
set
as
at
opposed
a
to this is
certain
more
time.
passive.
The
So you see maybe the press is
thermostat,
I don't
you
know,
don't
maybe
know
your
what's
lights
gonna
are
happen.
passive.
Yeah, but
Depends on,
the point is that it's not a question.
Okay. Now, this came up. Hello, this came up for us. Okay. So this what does that have to do with people in Hashgacha? What it has to do with us is came up a question to Rabbi Reese like this. There was a restaurant that wanted to be able to make pizza as soon as Shabbos ended. To make pizza, you need a really hot oven. So what they wanted to do was they wanted their oven to go on a timer on Shabbos afternoon. This way, you could get preheated. So when they showed up, whatever the time that Rabbi Eismach tells them they're allowed to come into the restaurant, they could start putting the pizza right into the oven as soon as they come in. They wouldn't have to wait for the oven to preheat. Okay, they would save whatever amount of time on that.
You would need to turn it off and back on.
Because of the pastisol part of it?
Pastisol,
Yeah, well, the pastisol, we could deal with that. That's easier to deal with.
Yeah,
Maybe they
remember,
had...
you can slip that
That's
and
true.
you
I
can-
forgot about that. And maybe they had a...
Maybe.
Maybe they had a... What's it called? The globe
Like
bar.
you
Who
put-
knows?
or you're
Anyways,
putting it in-
Globe
you're
bar.
putting the pizza, globe bar. But I didn't think about that. I didn't think about that. They wanted to... Could they do it for Shabbos? So Rabbi Reese told them, he said, because of this thing, Rabbi Reese said to them, he said, he says, you can only do that if the oven stays on low from the beginning of Shabbos. Okay, so this way, you're not starting up the oven, you're just raising the temperature. He says, but if the oven would be off for the whole Shabbos, no, you can't do that. Okay, you can only have it if it would be on low beforehand, and then, I'm not sure how they would pull that off to get the thermostat to raise, I guess, some kind of a thing on their thermostat to raise the temperature, as of this time to raise the temperature, that he said that was okay. Because of this thing, because of this Rabbi Shachta thing.
While being a machmer store, something which most people are not machmer.
So Rabbi Shachta said that a person should be machmer on this thing. A person really should be machmer on
Is
this
there a
thing.
difference between gas and electric ovens?
I'm not sure. It's a good question. I'm not sure. I don't think there's a difference. It's a fair question. Why would he choose? Rabbi Shachta said they should be machmer on this. That's why he wanted to do
You're
it.
leaving their Moshe out of this.
That what?
Left their Moshe out.
Optionals.
Timers are a problem.
I'm not exactly come to it, but maybe you're correct. But people ignore that.
They say, Rabbi Temler says one of his reasons was Rabbi Zalman brought this Yerushalmi.
Really?
That was really
Okay. Okay. So now, well, I'm going to say something about that in a second. I'm coming a little bit to that. I'm not sure if I'm going to exactly. Okay. Now, I was told this. I didn't hear this myself, so I'm just telling of what I was told. The Rebelsky said the same thing, or not said the same, a similar thing, not because of the starting. The Rebelsky said is when Moshe didn't want people to use timers, as is well known, he has a truth about that. He doesn't want people to use timers on Shabbos. It's because Moshe didn't want, and we'll hear more about this later. Moshe didn't want people just doing anything that. Really, the Moshe doesn't want you turning lights on and off on Shabbos. He didn't want you just doing everything you can on Shabbos. So, and therefore, a guy could run his whole business on Shabbos. He didn't that he didn't want. It's missing in the feel for what Shabbos is supposed to be like, and therefore he didn't want that. So, and Rebbe therefore they couldn't do it. But he said, but if the oven would be on a baking temperature, that would be okay. Meaning, let's say 300 degrees that you could bake, regular things in it. The pizza oven has to be way hotter than that. If I remember the number was 800 degrees. He said, as long as it was on a baking temperature, I'm not sure why baking temperature would have made it better. I'm not sure why that was the dividing line. Rabbi Reese says I can understand, which is, I don't want it to start the oven on, I want the oven to be on. Okay, so it could be on 200 degrees, it could be 100 degrees, but it doesn't make a difference, as long as it's on. Belsky's, what they told me that he said, I didn't hear myself, this that has to be on 300, that I didn't exactly get how that solved his problem, but suppose he said something like that. Okay. That was one case. Now, there's another case where Shachta was machzir. And that was like this. This came up in the year, if I remember correctly, the year 2000. Okay, and it's relevant because in the year 2000, lots of people made their communications by fax machine. Okay, when you want to tell someone a message far away, you send the fax to somebody. Okay, nowadays it's like, what is a fax? Like, what is that thing? You know? But anyhow, they sent faxes, and not only that, but faxes in those days, when you sent the fax, it printed out of the other guy's machine. Okay, there was actually a fax machine sitting on the table someplace, and the stuff printed out. Nowadays, the faxes just comes by email, so you just get your fax by email. So it wasn't relevant to this thing. So Rav Shachta said is, if you're sitting, in that case, you're in New York, let's say on a Friday, and you send the fax to someone in Europe, then when you send the fax is going to print out in his fax machine on Shabbos. Okay, because right now it's Shabbos in wherever the right place is in Europe. It's let's say in Russia, it's Shabbos now. So if I put the thing into the fax machine now, it pops out and it's going to be Shabbos. So I'm starting melacha on Shabbos. Okay.
There was a story. I don't know if it's true.
Okay.
There was a Chassish who in Bnei Brak, and he would say his shmuz and shal Shevisas. Motzai Shabbos, they'd write it up and fax it. And the Chassidim in Brooklyn had a fax machine, and then they'd read the shmuz
on Shabbos for that.
at shal Shevisas in Brooklyn.
Okay, so Rav Shachta said, no, you're doing melacha on Shabbos. He said, you're doing melacha on Shabbos.
You're doing melacha in the U.S. or you're making someone's Keilim?
He says, your Keilim are starting up a melacha on Shabbos. That's what's going on. You have Keilim that are starting up melacha on Shabbos.
The person whose fax machine is.
Well, so that is a question, which is, the Shevisas Keilim was on my Keilim. I don't have any Shevisas Keilim on your Keilim. I don't have to worry about a guy's Keilim.
Guy's fax machine.
Right.
Wait,
But,
is he saying that Lagabe, this
No.
Keilim, or that the person is
but it's the guy's fax machine.
doing something?
You're communicating with him.
Is
Because-
it the Keilim the issue?
yes,
or?
it was Keilim. Now, I can't answer this part of it. What about the fact that it's not my Keilim? There's no Isser Shevisas Keilim, even if you held of it on someone else's Kli. But he says, it's like setting the timer. I'm making melacha happen on Shabbos that I'm not supposed to do. So Rebelski says basically, even if you were machmer for the other thing, which I don't think he really held of starting melacha, he says at least there. This is a more lumdish way of saying. He says at least there you could say he says you could imagine that starting melacha is an eisha mishum chitza. That's the words he used. It's eisha mishum chitza, which is to say is today I set a timer. Tomorrow the timer causes the melacha to happen. So you could say that what happens tomorrow is my responsibility. I set that in motion, and then you could imagine that being misyachas to me. Okay, no problem. He said, but on Friday, he said, did it on Friday, so you say what happened over there is connected to me. Okay, it's Friday for me. How can I be Mechal Shabbos on Friday? He says, how can it be that just let's say it's connected to me. So it's connected to me. So what? It's Friday now. Now it's Friday morning. What did I do wrong? Okay.
You're making someone, when I say you're being machshel someone, not being machshel on this chumrah, because the person whose fax machine is.
No, it's a guy. It's a company. No, not a year. No. So now Rav Shachter's response. I'm going to tell you what I think he said. I'll tell you what he said, and I'll tell you what I think he meant. He says no. I think punk fakir. But he didn't explain what he meant. He says no. I think it's punk fakir. Okay, and I'm guessing what he means is over here. What the case is stronger because when I send the fax, I'm actually having melacha happen on Shabbos. I'm causing melacha to happen on Shabbos. I happen to be on Friday, but they're at Shabbos. Okay, whatever he meant. Now,
Would this be down to like chametz b'makom that it's not Pesach for you and it's Pesach for the chametz? Ramesh was said that l'chatchili you should be machmer.
I don't know if it's
makom chametz, not just your makom.
So I don't know because there's an issue to own chametz. So is the owning of the chametz where I am, or the owning of the chametz where the chametz is? But over here, Rebelski saying, how can I be mechal Shabbos?
There's a shame chametz even if I'm here.
How can I be mechal Shabbos when it's Friday? It's Friday. Okay, I'm not sure. Now, before we get to the last case of Shevisas Keilim, I'm going to branch off for a second because this to do about faxes at that time brought up three other questions. Okay, that are not to do with Shevisas Keilim. They're more Amir al-Akim kind of questions. Okay, and that is like this. The question was, you find out a piece of information. People work in Hashgacha. The RC finds out a piece of information, and he wants to tell the company. In that case, they want to tell by fax, but that's not relevant whether you do by email or fax. It's all the same thing, or by phone for that matter. And you want to give information to this people in Europe or the Far East, and they're going to do something because of that piece of information you told them. Okay, is that okay? Forget not when I'm talking about the Shevisas Keilim. Is an Amir La'akim question. I'm going to say something, and he's going to do. I'm going to say something now. I'm going to call you up and say, "Hi, Bob." Something. I'll give you the 3 cases in a second. In those 3 things, I'm going to tell him a certain thing, and Bob is going to go ahead and do something because that is that Amir La'akim. Okay. So the first one.
He's doing it for himself.
So I'm going to give you 3 cases. Just give me a second. I'm going to give you 3 cases. The first one is the simplest case, which is to say, I tell him you should know that this material is. We figured out it's okay. You can use this ingredient. Okay. So now the fact that I know that the minute he's waiting for permission, as soon as he gets permission, he's going to right away go start making production. Okay. But there, like you would think, that it's a daita denafshe. Okay. It's a daita denafshe. He's choosing to go make production today. I happen to know that he's going to do it, but he's not doing it. I'm just opening the door to let him do it. But what he chooses to do today or tomorrow, that's his business. That was for sure okay. That's not a problem. Okay. Rebelsky, for some reason, thought that if it was a Jewish company, he was concerned about Messiah the Avera. Okay, that's a separate question. Is that exactly doesn't fit into those rules over there? Okay, we think about that. But he didn't want to do it. If it was a Jewish company, don't tell them. Okay, that's put on the side because those are a little more complicated. Is it really Messiah? He could do it anyhow. He doesn't care. I'm not sure. Okay, but the second question was, okay, what happens if we figured out that something was treif? Okay, and we came to a decision that this thing is treif, and we need to stop them from producing it. We need them to make a recall, and that means it's not a matter of him choosing to do it. I give him the instructions, he's going to do it because I told him to do it. He's doing it 100% because the rabbi called up and said to him, "Bob, you have to do this, or you have to stop doing this, or make a recall. You have to do something because of me." He's for sure doing because of me. For life, he doesn't want to do it. He's doing it for sure because of me. So you would think that would be not okay, or they'll say no, just the opposite. Okay, the Mishnah Berurah says you can even tell a guy to do an issa deraisa when it's a michshol to the rabbim. So if here's a michshol to the rabbim, whatever I found out that something is not good, what he sold already, what he's about to sell, face, whatever it is. So there it's a michshol to the rabbim. He wasn't worried about the Amir La'akim part of that either. Okay, the third case is in the middle. Okay, the third case is we figured out, we decided that something needs to be kashered. Okay, we decided needs to be kashered or had a kasher. A detail was figured out that will now allow kashering to go ahead. And I give them, I say to them, okay, we settled this problem. It needs to be kashered or how it's going to be kashered. Bob, here's what you have to do. Okay, now I know that as soon as he gets permission, he's going to go ahead with it. Now he knows how to kasher it or that he has to kasher it. He's going to go right to work to kasher it. What I mean is that the kelim have to be clean and ein ben yomer before he can kasher it. So I know that the minute I tell him what he should do, he's going to get right to work to make it clean and ein ben yomer, so that Sunday or Monday he can kasher as soon as he can. Okay.
Could wait for tomorrow.
What do you say?
Could wait for tomorrow. It's because he wants to do it as soon as possible.
So well, this is how.
This is all like there's Amir La'akim is there's the Amira, which has a problem of Dabar Davar and all those problems,
But
and then
this
there's the
guy's
Ma'is
not
Hakim. The Amira is on Friday, so it's hard to understand what the problem with the Amira B'chal would be.
Okay.
The Amira Dabar Davar, it's a Friday afternoon.
Okay.
And on the Ma'is itself, it's a guy for his own needs. It's a whole.
So
different
let me just
getting lost. On
okay.
how
Let me
they're
split this part.
marrying the two and making this one package deal.
Okay. Let me tell you how he split it. You'll tell me if you think it made sense to you. Okay. Let me tell you how he split it. He's like this. He says, if I go ahead and schedule a mashgiach to show up on Sunday at 8:00 in the morning, okay, then I schedule the guy and I call. I say, Bob, we schedule the guy. The rabbi's going to be there at 9:00 on Sunday morning, and this is what you have to do between now and then. Okay, so now everything that he's doing is because I told him he's got to get ready for the rabbi to show up at 9:00 on Sunday. Okay, I'm not giving him any space to do it when he wants to do it. I'm telling him to do it. You have to do it at this specific way because by Sunday morning it's got to be clean and ein ben yomer by that time. Okay, so I'm pushing him into that he didn't want you to do. He says, but if I say to him, this is what you got to do. Okay, and then once you're ready, schedule the rabbi. Then if he says, okay, I'll schedule the rabbi for Sunday morning, that everybody goes fine. He says, that's no problem, because then, again, it's all a daita denafshe. He's choosing to get it clean, have it ready for Sunday morning. He could have done it for Tuesday morning if he wanted to do it. Okay.
Are we assuming, I guess we're assuming that you can't have workers working for you in a place where it's Shabbos, even if you're in a place where it's...
You mean the Amir La'akim?
Yeah. I mean, this whole...
I hear easier, that they're doing melacha for you in the place. You think...
People have foreign workers in all sorts of countries, so... Do they have to stop when it's Shabbos For them, I mean, the guy's he's a Malay.
That's not Tzarech Yisrael. This is nothing here is Tzarech Yisrael.
Say, even in that case.
It's not. If I tell him the Mashiach is showing up on Sunday, and you have to get ready for him to be there, that's not for me. That he's not doing it for my benefit.
My production. If I'm Kedem and I'm making a production, so then that's Tzarech Yisrael. But if it's a guy, if it's craft making a production in the middle of nowhere, it's his own production, it's his own product. It's nothing to do with me. He wants it to be kosher so he can sell it, and it's nothing to do with me. There's nothing there. There's no Yisrael B'chlal. For me, the Amir is on Friday. There's no Amir B'chlal.
But
there's no Davar. There's no Motzai Shabbos. There's nothing here. It's a whole nothing burger.
Why? Because the rabbi is coming on Sunday, so I'm forcing him to do stuff on Shabbos. I'm telling him he has to do it.
But you're not forcing him to do anything. It's not even that thing Afshay is a shmooze when he's doing something that's Tzarech Yisrael, your personal benefit. There's no personal benefit for me. It's his benefit, it's his mice, it's his thing. If a guy's making shoes and he wants to sell them to Yidden, and he wants and Sunday's the day the Elm comes in, the fact that he's gonna make an extra 10 pairs on Shabbos to try to have in time for Sunday, there's no havamina, it's a Motzai Shabbos.
Okay. Let me think about that. I'm not sure what to say about that. Okay,
that might not be true. If he's going to be selling to Yid, then you know he's going to be selling to Yid. That's a different story.
But I have no control over him. He's a guy. He has his own business. There's no Motzai Shabbos. There's no B'chtei Sheyasu after Shabbos. If a guy owns a company,
a guy makes a bias on Shabbos, so you're not allowed to use it. So
No,
it's
sure.
a child is more for some or not.
No, it's
It's
if you hire him to do it.
No. If
you hire him to do it.
Even if you didn't.
If a guy's built on Shabbos,
none of it wasn't a Yid B'chlal involved. It was fully owned by a guy the entire time. Was no commitment for me to buy anything after Shabbos. There's nothing there. It's a nothing burger.
Okay, let's go to our last case, a totally different case. Okay, not so Shevisas Shabbos, sort of Shevisas Shabbos wrong, and that's like this. Okay, I already told you that basically you can't allow to do whatever they want to. Okay, there's no Isser Shevisas Keilim. They can, so to speak, do whatever they want to. Okay, so a question came up. This is not our question. The beginning of our question is that some time ago a shaila came up, which is a Yid who owns vending machines. Okay, the Yid owns a vending machine. The vending machine is sitting in an airport someplace or wherever it is, and at some stadium, and you go there and you can buy food if you want to. Okay, so Poskim brought up questions about whether that's okay. The questions had to do with mekach memkar. One of the big questions was mekach memkar because I'm selling things to the guy, I'm making a kinyan for the guy, I'm getting money back from the guy. The money's coming into my machine on Shabbos. There were questions of schar Shabbos. Okay, and Poskim talked about that. Some were okay with it or not okay. Some of them said about the mekach memkar, you should make a tanai that everything that the person buys, I'm being mocked with him already in advance. I'm not being kind of the money till later. Then they said interesting about the schar Shabbos. I'll just mention it for what it's worth. They said there's no isser schar Shabbos on someone buying something from your machine because the primary thing that they pay for is the object. They buy a bottle of soda. The dollar that they put in is for the soda. The fact that I'm offering a service also, that I have a machine here and it's refrigerated and all the kinds of things, that's secondary. The ikar is not for this thing I did on Shabbos. The ikar is for the object, for the can of soda, the bag of chips. That's the ikar what I'm paying for. That's not a schar Shabbos. Okay, so that was what they talked about. That. Whether it's mutter or not like that. Okay, that was a shaila from beforehand, and I guess people in vending machines have to think about that. But there's a modern version, a more recent version of that, where it has a more significant shaila. And that's like this. They now have vending machines that don't just give you packaged food, but they cook food for you live. Okay? They cook the food and heat food. You could buy hot dogs and French fries and pizza. You could buy things made right there for you, heated up, and cooked for you right on the thing. So in those, so the first thing is there's a Kashrus issue to this, and that's going to play into what our problem is, which is you have to fix that machine to make sure no one else can play with the meat or the cheese or things that are in there. And open up the bag and put things in to make sure it stays kosher. You may have to deal with bishalakim sometimes. Okay, those are Kashrus, traditional Kashrus things. But because of the Kashrus issues, that I can't just walk over to a machine and buy a hot dog from any random machine, memela, on the front of the machine, it's very obvious that this is a kosher machine. It has a hashkachan. It's got a letter on the front that says, this machine is kosher and you could buy this and this thing. So now we run to a different question. Not the, so to speak, traditional Shevisas Keilim, or my Keilim doing melacha. No, my Keilim not melacha. The guy who walked over chose to do melacha. My Keilim didn't do anything. But the question is there a Zilzal Shabbos? Okay, because it's obvious that this machine is owned by someone Jewish, run by Jewish people. There's a bunch of Hebrew words and rabbis' names on there that says this machine is okay you could use this machine. That's what it's saying. So, and that machine is running on Shabbos. Okay, so there's no in the Shevisas Keilim things I mentioned to you before, in the Shilas about, does it look like Amir al doesn't look like I told him to do it? That's not over here. It's obvious anyone who buys the stuff is buying it. He's choosing to do it. But is there a question of zilus of the Shabbos? So Rav Vosner says, he says this. I was thinking about putting these words up. There's a bunch of words here. He said the idea that a person should have a business running on Shabbos, that he should have a business that Mamash runs like regular on Shabbos. He says, Shabbos kachol asher ein lecha zilzul Shabbos from the Rabbanon Gadol mizeh. He says, it's like terrible that there should be such a thing. Okay. And, what do you say?
Even if it has regular vending machines,
no, because in a regular vending machine, it has no shaykhs to the yid. It's not connected to me. The person who's buying the stuff. They go to
a Coke machine in the mall.
Yeah, but he's not saying
so you're saying it's me. It's bad for me to be running a business on Shabbos. Okay, then I didn't really like that, but I hear what you're saying. You're saying is that the problem is me running my business, not the guy, not that the look of the machine.
I mean, aside from the fact that you may have Muslims that want a kosher machine, but also everybody in the airport knows that everybody realizes that it's like impossible or very difficult to shut off the machine for Shabbos. You can close your store for Shabbos.
Therefore what?
Therefore, it's not a Zilzul Shabbos because no one's cheapening the Shabbos. It's going. You know, if I open my store on Shabbos, that's one thing. If I have something in a public area all the time and everybody realizes it would be bizarre to shut it down on Shabbos.
Okay, interesting point. Now,
what if you had like a Dunkin' Donuts which said kosher and it was open on Shabbos?
No one thinks that that's owned by a yid. Okay, but maybe.
In terms of Zilzal, it's Zilzal.
I was just telling somebody H&H Bagels on Broadway. I don't know if it's still there, but Broadway and 81st. It's a popular place, good hashgacha. There was a sign in Hebrew. Don't worry, this place is open Shabbos and Yontif. The owners aren't Jewish.
Okay, now
he wasn't talking about machines cooking.
I'm trying to remember what he's talking about. I don't remember what the case was. He was talking about this case, of course. It didn't exist when he was around. I don't remember the specific case. I'll go back and see. I'm not sure. Now I asked one of the Ramosha used before I go on. Ramosha, when he talked about timer, he uses very similar wording. This thing about Zilz or Shabbos, that lights go on and off. But anyhow, okay. So I asked one of the hashkachas that one of the people gave hashkacha on these kind of machines. I don't think they do it anymore, but one of the places that give it, I said to them, what do you do about this? What do you think about this? So they said our machines were not so advanced. They couldn't be turned off like remotely or put on a timer to be on and off certain times. They were just, it wasn't realistic to have them turned off for Shabbos. So we put up a sign on the front that said this machine operates 6 days a week, and is from, Motzai Shabbos says after sundown until Friday. He says, now we couldn't control it, of course not. That made no difference. But we decided that was as much as we could do. So we put it. Now, of course, you could come on Shabbos morning and buy something also. The machine wasn't physically not working. But they said that sort of
taking the Zilzal Shabbos.
A little bit took away from the Zilzal Shabbos as a way of saying not writing in Lashon Kodesh, like if you're buying here, you should do tshuva. It didn't write that. It just sort of I made it feel like it's not so. We're trying to make a point that we care about Shabbos, and if you do it, we can't stop you, kind of thing. Okay. Now I'm finished. I just we once talked about that a totally different problem, which is it could be that if a person buys food from that machine on Shabbos, the food is actually usher because he had melacha done for him on Shabbos. That has its own a Kashrus question, which is we just sold him food that we told him is kosher, and he's going to take home and eat it as kosher. He wants to eat kosher food when in fact it might actually not be kosher because it was cooked on Shabbos. So that's a separate thing we talked about that once.